All right, so welcome to this week's Couch Time with Cataya. And I am having a beautiful guest that I've known for quite some time. We know each other from working at the Plant Spirit Medicine Conference and supporting at the Plant Spirit Medicine Conference, and also working in the holistic healing fields and transformational fields. So obviously I have an affinity for people that are really doing personal growth work and development work and who are very on cue and on check for helping to make this world a better place. So Melanie, I'm trying to think of, I mean, it's going to come into place into some of the things I'm going to say in your chart. You definitely hold a lot of space for, I would say, harder cases and harder situations. And you have definitely specialized in substance and substance addiction in the past and helping people with addictive traits and moving through really sticky points in their lives, right? So if you want to speak a little bit more to that, if you feel comfortable to do that, if it feels right, I know people would love to probably hear more.
I've been working as a clinician for 15 years now. I originally went in working in end-of-life care and cancer care, and it was too much. It was too much watching people die. I couldn't handle it. So I went into substance abuse work, which I still do a little bit of. I don't do a lot of that. I do a lot of sex addiction work now, which is a lot easier, oddly enough, than substance. And I do complex trauma. So you're right, all the hard cases, the cases that nobody else wants, they end up on my desk, which I love it. I love the work that I do, but it's, I was explaining to somebody yesterday, we don't see you a lot. I said, when you do the kind of work that I do, and particularly after the past 2 years, which have been fairly hellish, I don't have a lot of bandwidth. I listen to people cry all day long, which I oddly love, but at the end of the day, I don't really want to see a lot of people. I need to decompress and compartmentalize and sort out all the stuff I heard during the day. But I love what I do. Absolutely. I couldn't expect to do anything else, really. It's odd. It started off, I as you know, I worked in the fashion industry for over 2 decades and ran a very successful import company. And one day I had an awakening, and that's another story for another time, or maybe today. And I woke up and closed my business that day. And it was a business that employed a lot of people and had offices around the world. So it wasn't a small little home-based thing, but it wasn't the right thing to do. And I knew I wanted to help people. I had become a Reiki master, I think now it's 34 years ago. I just aged myself. But one of the early trainees, before we learned how to do Reiki online in a weekend. So I did that for a long time. And I just knew I wanted to support people. And I remember one day I was working on somebody when I was doing Reiki, and I just felt her trauma. I knew she had been raped. And that was the beginning of when I said, okay, I need to start transitioning really into a credentialed line of work where, Reiki is not really credentialed. It's a beautiful modality, but I wanted more. So my journey began then.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Yes, yes. And I mean, it speaks out right away looking at your charting details. And one of the things I think that's really foundational, and it's foundational for anybody that works in the holistic fields in any form, any shape that's holding space for people, is I know when I did my studies, the first paper we had to submit was what our self-care plan looked like for our own self.
I remember we did that too. Take care of yourself. And I remember people saying, well, I get my nails done. And I'm like, I go into the forest for days on end. It was just so different. My self-care was, I've always taken care of myself though. But yeah, it's like if we don't get our bandwidth back, then we combust. And that happened actually to me in December.
You can hit burnout very,
I'm
very
so
quickly
tired.
if it's not something that's really taken into proper account. And like you said, it's very different what it looks like to go in and have your nails done. It's a nice treat, and it's a nice fun thing if that really speaks to you. But the difference of really really dropping into, how do I recharge myself, and mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, what are the things I need to do to really make sure that all of those cups are filled in the way that allows one to be really solid to hold space for others.
Well, I'm part of it, obviously, seeing my own therapist, Cataya, thank you. And getting that support and being okay with asking for help. And that's something I had to learn because I always thought asking for help was a sign of weakness, as the messaging that I got growing up. And it's actually not, it's a sign of strength. And I've been asking for a lot of help the past couple of months because it's been tough, over 2 years being on the front lines is pretty exhausting.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how there's so much reverse psychology that's been put out into programming into our world, that to be able to speak about all the things that are actually happening within us and to turn over those pieces, that's where it's actually strength. It's hard work to actually speak to some of the harder stuff that comes up and to flush it out and not allow it to turn into addictions, to allow it to turn into destructive habits and behaviors that actually take us down, versus being able to
Yeah.
understand like, the roots of what it is we need to move through. And actually, I really resonate with the concept of digesting. If we don't digest our experiences, then they're going to morph and form into other things that take us over, and habitual habits and patterns that are toxic for ourselves or for others. So I would say anybody that's in a human body, this is just my perception, if we're in the human onesie, then we need to be able to really decompress what it looks like to do this human walk and human journey, because it's
Well,
for the faint of hearted.
well, but not even healers. I think everybody really needs to sit every now and again and take stock of their life. Where are you? Are you in a pissy mood for 5 days straight? Okay, what's going on? Look at it. And what I noticed in my clinical practice is there's a lot of resistance to going in because people are afraid of what's going to come out. So I try to teach people, hey, it's okay to get angry. It's okay to cry. There's nothing wrong with feeling your feelings, particularly men, right? Men are like, your boy, don't cry. I love it when men cry in front of me. It's like, oh, yes, I
Yeah.
love it. But yeah, it's so important to stop, right? Stop, take stock,
Mhm.
relax. You don't have to be with somebody 24 hours a day. It's okay to be by yourself. It's okay to look inward. I had to learn that.
Mhm. So much of reprogramming the programs and the patterns, and like you said, there's so
Right.
much that's been dictated that, do we even question, where did that thought form come from? Where did that concept come from? Why am I thinking this way? Is that my own thought? Is that a societal thought? Is that a cultural thought? Is that a family dynamic that's been instilled and assimilated into one's field? Being able to really start to take stock of where our thoughts come from, the decisions that we make, and is it myself that's speaking, or is that my mother speaking through me? Is that my father speaking through me? Is that, an old friend speaking through me? Like, when we really look to see, what is actually taking over, or really navigating the thought forms, where are those things actually stimulating from?
And that's a big piece, and it's hard to do on your own. You need to do it with somebody, because and there's so you can go walk the line, right? But then there's the line that goes out here and the line that goes out here, and you want to investigate that. There's so many pieces to people's journeys and lives. And it's interesting. I just had somebody new this morning, and he came to me with a specific thing, and I said, okay, what's really going on? The presenting issue, right? Somebody comes into therapy or even to talk, even friends, they gravitate because of what I do. And they come in and they go, okay, what's really going on? And you see like 5 or 6 or 7 conversations later, the truth, the real issue comes out. So there's so many layers to the onion. And it's just like, sometimes it gets very tiring trying to unpack it all. It's a lot.
And recognizing when we're coming up against roadblocks and walls, like that wall has been created for a reason, because there's a
Yeah.
mechanism in there.
Right, right, right.
When that wall it's healthy for that wall to come down.
And it's okay that the wall is there. It's okay. And it's okay to be afraid of what the wall represents. But fear should not stop you from trudging forward.
Mhm.
Fear should be an example of an opening. If you attack fear in a healthy way with somebody, and very slowly and gently, it becomes a possibility. Fear only comes up when you worry about what's going to be. But if you can enter the process of your journey in that moment and just walk in the moment, moment by moment, there's no fear because you're not worrying about what is or what was. And that's such a simple concept. If you remain in the present moment, right here, right now, fear is not going to come up at all, ever. It's
Yeah.
just not. It can't. It just can't. So yeah, and I use that concept for myself also. Where am I? What's going on? What am I unpacking today? And I unpack it in the moment, not in tomorrow, not in yesterday.
Mhm.
Makes it easier, makes it fun sometimes.
Taking the mental stock of all the different pieces that are circulating through the mind, almost like when we brush our teeth at night or we're getting ready for bed and we're doing our whole process. Do we do a little bit of an internal dialogue of just like, oh, okay, let me just scan over my day? And like you said too, I think one of the most important things is there safety to be able to unpack and get into the roots of things, so we're able to actually see why do I do the things that I do? Why do I say the things that I say? Why do I act in the ways that I act? And being able to see if there's something that hasn't been digested, is there a whole world that's been created around that because it's trying to safety something that is actually creating a lot of pressure and creating a lot of strain? Because to hold an old imprint in place takes so much work than to actually flush it through and to come to terms with something that's.
I know. Well, and it's so interesting. I'm like, okay, if I say to somebody, just like gently talk about it. It's okay. And I always ask, what's the worst thing that can happen? Are you going to die if you tell me what's going on? And they're like, if they think about it, no, I'm not going to die. Okay. Are you going to drown in water? They think about it. No, I'm not going to drown in water. What's the scariest thing about resourcing out what's going on out here? They'd never have an answer. Never. It's the wildest thing. It's just, I think, just actually starting,
Mhm.
right? Just start talking. And I've had people over the years who have come in not being able to speak at all. And we just sit there for an hour and look at each other. And I prompt a little bit. And then finally, 5, 6, 7 sessions later, the whole story comes out.
And then that.
Especially, well, with trauma, right? It takes time to divulge that, sexual abuse and things like that.
Yeah. And especially, a lot of people that I would say probably seek your services, or definitely the people that I connect in with, typically were empaths. And
Yeah.
so there's a certain feeling out of the space until we can harmonize and really, and a lot of intuitives as well. So there's a connecting into what these different fragments and pieces look like to be able to create that internal safety to then start to be able to allow things to open up like a flower blooming. It doesn't like we're going to bloom overnight. It's like there can be.
Takes time.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
that.
I just look at myself right at my age and going back to school in my 30s. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but going back to school in my 30s, I was thinking the other day, wow, I wish I knew, or I wish I knew I wish I know now or knew now what I knew, what I didn't know then. Like I wish at my age I could relive some of the experiences that I did when I was like 20 and 30 and reapproach them in a different manner because I know so much more, right? And it just takes time to unpack. And when there's no timeline though, right? And you know that as well. When
Yes.
somebody is ready, with what I'm going through right now, I've finally said, okay, I'm done. And this is 5 years down the road. It took time to get me there. For whatever reason, and whatever part of your journey, it takes time. And I think that's the biggest message is it's so important to be loving to yourself and care about yourself and be aware of what your needs are and ask for help. You don't have to get there in a day or a week,
Yes.
right? And then as you travel, the journey changes from the original thought that you had, oh, I want to get here. But as you travel, the getting there doesn't seem so important as what's happening now, for
Mhm.
me at least, right? I don't know, old
And
age
it's the
wisdom or
journey.
something.
It's that beautiful walk of the journey itself, right? It's, sometimes we think, okay, it's all about the, completing the destination, but actually the walk is where we're really unraveling and we're getting clear and understanding ourselves. And I mean, I think, and this is why I do all the work that I do and why I'm so passionate, is knowing thyself is the best medicine that we can give ourselves. And that's what we're here to really do and explore, is to really understand the truth of who we are and to get into the roots of what that looks like. Because when we honor who we truly are and we walk an honest path of who we are, and we are able to really value that path and give ourselves the truth of that path, everything falls into place. And
Everything.
yeah, I remember saying that, you know, people ask, why do I do what I do? And it's, that it is um, I do work with men now in my practice, but in the past, it's typically been females for a very large portion, because it really resonated with me. The Dalai Lama saying in the 2020, I think it was 2020 or 2026 Peace Summit, that it's the awakened Western women that would save the planet. And my whole system just went off. And I was like, okay, so if it's the awakened Western women that are going to save the planet, it's actually helping women to get to a place, or helping, I really feel it's on a soul level at this point in time, that, those that are able to really become very innately connected with the truth of who they are, and are able to follow the path of the instinctual calls that come from within, are where we're actually going to be positioning ourselves to be in the place of helping and supporting, and
Mhm.
really turning over the things that need to get turned over to make the world a better place and to move things forward in those ways. Not for the faint of hearted, as we
No,
know.
no, not at all. And I think one of the important pieces is, yeah, getting to know who we are and being okay with who we are. And I often see in my world, not just in my work, that men particularly are afraid of going inward and looking and diving in and being vulnerable. And that's a big word, vulnerability. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to cry. It's okay to say, help me. And
I'm stuck. I don't understand. I'm stuck.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with admitting it, right? And I think people are really afraid of not being perfect. And again, it's the messaging that they got back when they were younger.
Mhm.
Be strong, be resilient, and look, life, particularly the last something years, has been brutal for a lot of us. People who are alone. It's been high stress, and people aren't okay right now. Nobody's okay right now. And the people who say they're okay are lying. They're totally lying because they're afraid to be vulnerable and say, I'm not okay.
Yeah,
I
or they're
hear a
they've
lot.
shelved pieces away that,
Yeah, let's just put it here. Everything is fine in my world today. And, I went and got groceries and I had my latte at Starbucks. And, I've got a million friends. It's like I look at Instagram and everybody's happy. No, that's not life. And it's okay to be unhappy. It's okay to be sad,
it's the full
right?
spectrum of the emotions, where we actually move through those places where we really evolve those pieces. But if we shelve something away, the analogy I have is, is a sandwich that we don't realize is there, that's in the corner of a room, and it's rotting away and it's molding, and it's like there's bugs and all kinds of things get attracted to it. It's like whatever doesn't get dealt with and hasn't been digested internally in ourselves, if we look at it externally, that is the visual of what that can look like. It becomes its own ecosystem. And then there's
It does.
things that get formed around it. Um,
Well, and it festers, right?
mhm.
And it festers and it grows. And then one day you're at rock bottom and you go, oh man, I should have dealt with that 10 years ago when it was in my face. But I chose to put it over here because it's too painful. Ugh, yuck.
Yeah. And hopefully it doesn't take hitting rock bottoms, hopefully more so for people to be able to comfortably untether the pieces that need to get untethered and unweave those pieces, so that there's more freedom and space. And of course, more freedom and space creates more happiness and joy, and all those pieces can be felt. So I'm going to do, we will dive into everything that we've just talked about is going to completely dovetail into what I'm going to speak about in your chart. So it's like the
Yay.
precursor to, like, and there that is, and there that is.
But you did my chart about a year ago, right?
We did some focusing on Vastu remedies, so bringing some remedies in for the areas where there was
Yeah, right.
bumpy parts in your chart. We all have bumpy parts. We all have growth curves. And so yeah, I specifically worked with Vastu remedies. So with the certain nakshatras and then having those foundations in place. Yeah.
Let's see what you got there on your little.
Okay. And it's always like just a little mwah, like a little kiss of a taste of something sweet, right? To drop into. Now I usually work with Ganesh because Ganesh for me is, and on the big scale is the gatekeeper for really supporting all the deities, all the higher lords and the energies that are out there. Now, do you have one that resonates really strongly for you with your path?
You mean a deity?
Yeah, or one that we can just do a little mantra for to really open up the space of dropping into your chart. I like to really bring a blessing and an appreciation to a chart because it is like it's literally like opening up the curtain, going, "Oh yeah, so that's what's going on. Like this is your life walk, right?" So I think that there's something really important about being in some reverence around that. Does
Well, it would be Krishna,
Krishna. Okay. Do you feel
obviously.
comfortable, or would you like to do just a little, like a small little chant for Krishna?
No,
Okay. Um,
he's with me all the time.
okay. Um, okay. So I'm just going to do a little chant for Krishna, just because I feel like it's important to call in these energies. Um, so I always use basically for Ganesh, usually it's removing of the blocks, but what we'll do today, because working with this finger is calling in the Jupiterian energy, which is very much about what's happening right now with this full moon that we've just gone through. And that's going to be in our field for some time. And Jupiter is all about wisdom teaching. It's all about knowledge. It's all about opening up the doors in the fields. And Krishna, I feel like, is a gatekeeper for the wisdom realm. So I'm going to hold these fingers here and just put them comfortably on my lap. And I'm just going to chant the mantra, Om Krishna, Om Krishna, Om Krishna, Om Krishna, Om Krishna, Om Krishna. I felt that energy. Okay.
I never realized how gorgeous your voice was.
Thank you.
Oh.
I let it spread as I do my general personality. It's like where I want it to go, I let it go. Um, so okay. Again, yeah, I just really appreciate, the wisdom teachings and the wisdom path, because, those of us that follow wisdom teachings and are here to really do deeper work, it takes a lot of work, it's a dedication to wanting to study, to wanting to continually study, and to wanting to continually learn more and to continue refine more of who one is. And the first piece I'm going to drop into, because it's Jupiter is up, and we did have a conversation about this yesterday, and I did do a posting around it, is with this full moon, when I dropped further into it and really connected it on a deeper level, the things that haven't been fully digested, and it's funny that we were talking about that beforehand, with this Jupiterian energy that's coming in, it is asking in a very expansive way for people to really dial in and to take some time to question on a much richer level and come back to intuition, come back to one's own senses, and to come back to one's own knowingness around some of the components that have been unfolding over these last few years. So your and it was one of the first things my eyes magnetized towards, was where your Jupiterian placement is in the charting. Of course, this is Jyotish astrology, cosmology that I specifically focus on. And your Jupiter is sitting in the 10th house, which is the house of career and the house of vocation. And it's sitting in the placement of Ardra, which is basically the teardrop of the world.
Mm.
So there's three symbols that come up when we think of Ardra as a visualization, is that it can be seen as the diamond. So it's about the crushing and compounding that takes place over and over and over and over again to refine and to purify a substance into a diamond. And so with the type of placement of having your Jupiter connected into Ardra, it's about being able to really go into the work and the workings to help to transform and bring forward the diamond within. And so that journey for yourself, tingles as I say this, and emotion coming in. And for the clients that you work with, that is the message that you're bringing forward. That is the space that you're holding. It's also the skull because it's one of the stronger outcast. I'll use the word outcast. So there's outlier and outcast. So it is very much a singular path in a lot of ways. So usually when we see Ardra come up, it does symbolize. I have Ardra in my makeup as well. That typically you're not going to have the family dynamics around you to be the support systems for who you are or to really understand who you are. It's a singular, more solo path. So it's actually connected very strongly into the Agoris, and it's a very intensive placement to look at. But the Agoris are people in India that actually walk a very abstract spiritual path. I'll use the word abstract because it wouldn't be as we would see it here, but it's all about breaking down every form of dogma. It's all about breaking down anything not to be godly in its godlyhood. And so it's a path where if someone is an Agori, they find the skull to a human head and they eat all of their food out of that skull. And it's about being able to really like take away almost like the grotesqueness of this life and break it down into everything is pure in its unpure and purity forms, that it is all God. And so it's I would say it's probably the most, I don't know if ruthless isn't the right word, but that's what kind of comes up. It's like they can do things to their bodies that are quite painstaking to like overcome the sensations and the mental psyche processes that unfold within the mind by abstracting the way that one would see the world. So it's being able to, it's a very powerful path. And it's one that is related to the Ardra native. And one of the first things they do is they remove themselves from any family structure to go off onto their own to follow this path. And so whenever you see Ardra come up, it's a very like, the native will naturally end up kind of unweaving from their family line and coming to walk a journey that's very like singular to some degree, but also finding the tribe that is able to connect in and that's able to be in synergy with the type of walk that one's walk is. And so
Are you talking about the Naga Babas, the naked Babas that walk around with their faces painted with ash and smoking ganja all the time?
There's a few. This one is it very, you would see it very similar. Definitely some of the methods that they work with is very similar. So it's usually considered a very kind of a specific form of the path that they would fall under. But a lot of, again, sometimes these different pieces will dovetail together, but they remove themselves from their family. They usually come into these small groupings, but also can be very singular in their process. And they'll usually cover themselves in the ashes of those that have been cremated. And anything that there isn't, I could go into detail. Even things like challenging themselves to drink their own urine, things like that, where it's like the human mind would have a hard concept with that. It's actually breaking down anything that would have kind of abstract focuses or putting themselves into posturings that would be almost impossible for the body to go into to overcome the mental focus that it takes to actually hold that posture for those periods of time.
So cool.
Yeah. And it's also seen as the teardrop. So Ardra natives will feel the impact of the pain of the world, and they will feel the roots of the truth of the things that take place. So it's one of the deepest. It's considered a cruel nakshatra because it's like you feel the cruelty of this world to some degree. And again, when we're on our path, we're able to see heaven and hell happening at the same time from these types of places, right? So it's definitely it's a nakshatra that requires a strengthening of self and a strengthening of character to really become very strong and like becoming that diamond, being able to sharpen the internal self to get to a place of really, really powerful internal ways of being. And I'm gonna flip to one of something different, which is with some of the face analogy, is whenever someone has a really strong, larger lower lip, and I have this, but not to the same degree you do, you are meant to be a communicator. So you have to be a communicator. So any work that you would be basically doing if you weren't using communication and communication, seeing the combination that's in your chart, communicating from a higher consciousness state and communicating to the deeper levels of things are where your soul has to, basically be pulled to and where it needs to function. So it's an automatic. As soon as I see that larger lower lip, it's like that person, like whether it be a spokesperson, whether it be on a public podcast, whether it be speaking to a large group of people, whether it be one-on-one, like there is a need to communicate at a very, very rich and deep level. And if you don't honor that, like you'll feel that compression, you'll feel that shut down piece within oneself, because there's that need is actually there. It's part of your soul makeup. And dropping into again, I try to pick 3 things that stand out immediately. So maybe I can hold back and do 4 because there's so much to say. But do you mind if I speak about your mother for a moment?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to go somewhere else, but then my eyes just went right to that place in your chart. So so your mother passed early in your life, which is always, when we think of foundational pieces that end up happening that really create or formulate who we are. It's so key. And usually people that really step into doing this type of work, because it hasn't come with an easy walk ahead of time. It usually there's been a push to have to get to a place of being able to, support others in their life walk. So with seeing your moon in the placement of what's called Bharani, Bharani is the placement of basically the opening of life and death. And so the deity Yama holds that space. And when we see Yama in that position, Yama is basically the gatekeeper that, from these traditions, somebody would connect in with when they finish their life cycle and almost doing like a life review. How did I show up in my life? How were the effects of the choices I made onto other people? What's the bigger picture that really took place in like how everything unfolded in my life? And whenever we see Bharani will indicate that there's usually going to be a loss. And when it's connected into moon is the representation of moon, mind, mother. So it's everything to do with the emotions, and it's sitting in the house of loss. So this was part of the destined plan for her to definitely pass early in life. And the 8th house is the house of death. It's the house of loss. It's the house of sex. It's the house of definitely like hidden secrets, and it can be scandal that is also connected into the 8th house. It's the house of like hardship. It's also a very powerful house because it's the house of deep diving and understanding things from really, really, really deep levels. And that's where I can see that connected into your 6th house placement, which is funny because the last few couch time with Catayas, it's been like I'm seeing the core people that I feel drawn to, like, hey, let's do a couch time. You guys have these placements. So basically what happens in seeing the 8th house and the 6th house having active planets, having Saturn there in Purva Bhadrapada is the name of this nakshatra. It's about that nakshatra is unlimited. So there is no boundary around the depth of what Purva Bhadrapada can look like. And it's sitting in Saturn, which is the planet of being of service and helping others. And the 6th house is all about illness, and it's all about loss, and it's all about struggle, it's enemies, it's being able to really help people to support them to move through some of these really challenging energies. And it's sitting in the Piscean energy, and sitting in Aquarius in 2 different components. So it's helping the greater whole. And it's also being able to work with the Saturnian energies and work with those energies that come from Jupiter of the wisdom teaching. So it's such a beautiful blend of being able to see like that in its creative motion. Like I can see where your first vocation came in, like where you're, working in the fashion industry, and that comes in really strongly when you see Venus in the 3rd house. And so that would have been a very rich, enjoyable walk for you, but it wouldn't have been your life work. It wouldn't have been your karma dharma path. So, but definitely an enjoyable.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you are definitely doing the work that you come here to do. And yes. Okay. I want to go into more, but I feel like I should cap it for just a little taste of a dovetail.
No, one more. Keep going.
One more. Okay.
One
okay.
more.
One more. Okay. So, okay. It's always really, really helpful to see. Well, I'm going to go into 2 more. I'm going to go into 2 more, and I'm going to bring them together into one. So, we've talked about, the 2 brothers that you have, and we've talked about, your dad, and they're not close connections. There's definitely a disconnect that's there. And when I look at your chart, that's meant to be. This is part of, that individual walk. And usually those that are here to really focus on, because you do have a lot of components that are connected into moksha thought and moksha thinking, which is, really completing in this life and having a spiritual space that you drop into. Those are the pieces that, usually things need to be a little bit more singular to really drop in there. If you had these strong connections and they were really solidified, the attention and focus can go in these different places. And needing to find a deeper truth and a deeper wisdom really comes in when we have a separation from family. And so with your positioning, you have a bit of a debilitation on your sun position, which will represent father, and that's in your 1st house. So a lot of your learning has come by the experience of your walk with the father that you have. So that's a direct correlation of the transformation point. When we think of there's a terminology called like a Gandanta point, where it's like there's just a lot of pressure that comes in to make something really transform. You have this, very pressurized space that comes into your 1st house. And so that's really giving in the higher mind the ability to transform the self because of some of this, the painful experiences that are experienced when there is disconnect from family, or it's just not easy. And Mars represents the dynamics of usually brother, and K2 is sitting in that position with Mars, which means that there's going to be a divide and a separation from the brothers. That connection won't be. It's meant to get pulled away. It's meant to get separated. So it's just helpful sometimes to be able to really see these things. And okay, this is part of my life walk. It's when we again digest it and we're able to really come to a place of like a deep understanding of it and a deep acceptance. One, it can also help to heal some of those pieces as well too. So there's some kind of a solidified dynamic when there is connection, but also to not try to make something be what it's not meant to be. So there can be an element of really almost finding love in the experience and finding love in the truth of the walk.
And that's hard, right?
Yeah, it's not for, yeah.
Not a cakewalk, darling.
Not a cakewalk. Yeah.
No cakewalk. The journey is, and now I know like why people really avoid it. Because I mean, what I've been through in the past 5 years has just been holy shit. And there are times where, okay, no more. I don't want to. And going to Peru and hanging out there, and more stuff got popped in, and oh, it's like, okay, just a
Mhm.
month break. I think I said to you a little while ago, I just need a month break from it, right? Because the intel comes in and you can't control what comes in. It comes in and it tends to come in
Like
like in
tidal
a
wave.
tidal wave,
Yes.
like maybe just a little tiny wave at a time, but no. And so that's hard to navigate when all the information's popping through,
Yes.
right? And I think that's why there's so much avoidance in doing the work for people, because it's sometimes like
Yeah.
I can't breathe.
Hmm. I feel like it's
But
like cracking open the closet and going, whoa, I'm just gonna close
it's
that.
like when you open the door, let's say the door is at the ocean, right? You open the door a crack thinking just a little bit of water is going to come in.
Hmm.
Doesn't work that way. And you can't say no because you're not in control of it,
Yes.
right? It's not you, it's those dudes up there.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, to the dudes, we will lovingly close the container. It's such a juicy conversation, and I
So
just
fun.
yes, I
Thank
so
you.
appreciate the openness and the vulnerability to really have these conversations, and to also I feel like give people permission to know that it's okay to do
It's yeah, exactly.
walk and to do the work, and to
You
to
won't
know
die.
there's and that there is bliss and love and expansion on the other side
And
when you
that's the
don't
thing.
have it,
Yeah.
you know we can
Well,
we,
I just want to close with this, and I use this metaphor a lot in my work, and it's the metaphor of the tunnel. And the famous poem, I think it was by William Blake. I forgot the name of it, but there's a famous line called "The only way out is through."
Mhm.
So as you approach a tunnel, it's still light. And as you get into the tunnel, it gets darker and darker. And then you're in the middle of the tunnel. It's like, I can't see.
Yeah.
And then you start to walk through the tunnel and it gets lighter. And then you're on the other side. But
Mhm.
you have to trudge through the darkness and through the shit and through the yuck to get through it. It's not fun.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen once, right? The journey is not a one path and then you're out. So you'll do this part. And then 5 years down the road, something else presents, and then you got to walk through again. And
Mhm.
I wish I knew what I know now when I was a lot younger,
Yeah.
because it probably wouldn't have been as difficult. But I'm very grateful for the hard parts of the walk, because
Well, that's
it gives
that's where the refining and the diamond gets formed, right? If we're told, I like that saying of life doesn't give us we get sent the test and the lesson, and then we get the understanding of what the lesson was about afterwards, right? So it's
like
like,
10 years down the road or
yeah,
20 years down the road,
oh,
you go, oh, that's what that was. Yeah.
that's what that learning was about.
Okay, well, I am going back to work now. 107. I got 10 minutes until my next call. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Super
you
fun.
for yes, for playing and for being open and expansive and for being you and bringing forward you.
Mm,
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
blessed, grateful, grateful. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Bye.